lately, for the past couple of weeks, there was like a war against First Amendment speech. What's your idea on that?
Well, I hate to say this, but I'm not surprised. In 2018, I was giving a lecture. In fact, I gave a lecture at my alma mater, the University of Hawaii, West Oahu. And it was during Constitution Day festivities.
Okay.
And if people aren't aware of that, Constitution Day is a day that's mandated. It's not a holiday that you get off, but it's a day mandated, I believe, by Congress, certainly by the federal government, to celebrate the Constitution. The irony is it's not well known.
Oh,
It really isn't. So I think for institutions, if I have this correctly, and if I have it wrong, people can correct it in the comments, I'm sure, let me know.
I'm sure they will.
You
Yes.
guys know. But I believe that you have to put up a display. If you get federal funding, you have to put up a display about the Constitution, or you have to have a speaker. It's either one of those two. And so I returned to my alma mater during the Constitution Day festivities. And I was, I think, technically the Constitution Day speaker. And I believe that was in 2018. So I gave a lecture entitled Free Speech and Fake News, the Crisis of Journalism in the 21st Century. And I believe I was sponsored by like the Legal Society or the Legal Club there, because when you go and speak on a college campus, you have to be sponsored by some on-campus entity. I think that's generally the case with colleges and universities. And in light of what's happening with free speech nowadays, and I noted this on social media recently, on Facebook, I don't believe I really don't believe that I could give that lecture now.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think you could either.
They will cancel you.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like, it was like a barn burner or agitprop. It wasn't anything, electric or eclectic or really controversial. But I don't really believe that I could give that lecture. In fact, I've come up with a new lecture entitled a kind of follow-up in light of the recent events, entitled Free Speech and Fake News, the Crisis of the broadcast industry in the 21st century.
Yeah.
And I'd like to give that lecture on a college campus now. So, but I don't think that's going to happen because the colleges and universities have been targeted.
They have. Yes.
And that's why I won't go back to my alma mater to give any lecture again.
It's kind of sad though.
I won't do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to target my college. It's a public college. It's a public part of the University of Hawaii system. I do not want to hurt my alma mater in any way, shape, or form. So I don't want that on my conscience that I would give a lecture and there would be reprisals from the federal government.
Yeah. No.
I don't want that.
So
I'm not going back to I'll go back for anything else, but I will not go back and give a lecture at my alma mater.
So do you think,
in light of what happened recently.
do you think 4 years from now you can go back and give that lecture?
Well, I gave it back in 2018, right?
Yeah.
And I have a new lecture, Free Speech and Fake News, the Crisis of Broadcast Media in the 21st Century. And I'll put this out right now. I don't know if anyone is going to watch or anyone will react. I invite any college, any university across the country to have me as a speaker for this brand new lecture that I'd be glad to give. in light of what's happened to people like Jimmy Kimmel.
Right.
And by the way, if Jimmy Kimmel ever returns on the air, I know I'm not a celebrity. I know I'm not a Hollywood star. I know I'm not an author. I'm just a retired freelance journalist, and I'm just a writer who writes about film. But I'd be glad to be a guest on his show in light of what's happened to him. I'd be very glad to be a guest on his show. And again, I'm not anybody. I'm just a working stiff writer, but
Do you
and a
think?
retired journalist. And so I'll put that challenge out for any college or university across the country to sponsor me for this brand new lecture, a follow-up to my old lecture, which I gave at my alma mater. So I'll put that out there. Harvard might be interested. They'd take a chance. I think Harvard would take a chance. Stanford might, but I don't know. But I'll put the challenge out there. Again, my new lecture is Free Speech and Fake News: The Crisis of Broadcast Media in the 21st Century. So I'll put that out there, but I think times have changed. In my lecture, I saw the erosion of not only the news media, certainly the news media as I knew it, being a print reporter and print journalist, but the broadcast media, television, and maybe radio and other broadcast outlets. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either.
I'm not surprised about what's happening.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. And I'm no fan of the FCC.
Yeah.
I won't say too much more about that. I never have. I've never liked the FCC. But yeah, I decided to put that out there. I'm not surprised. I kind of warned about, maybe not specifically what's happening now, but in a roundabout way, I warned about the erosion of free speech, erosion through news, the erosion of reporting, the impact of reporting, the kind of watered down, mealy-mouthed, milquetoast kind of not only news you're getting now, but the kind of hyperbolic, over-the-top, unrestrained agitprop passing for news that you also get now. So, especially the kind of news where someone on a major network can go and say that the houseless in this country should be basically terminated and get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have someone on a major news network saying that.
That's hard.
It is hard. Yeah.
Is this individual canceled?
Yeah.
Is this individual lost his job? Has this individual suffered any reprisals for actually wanting people without homes, people who are homeless and houseless, to die?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got a question for you.
This is the country we live in now,
Yeah.
where someone can get away with hoping that people die and it's acceptable. But somebody makes a mild joke like Jimmy Kimmel did, and all of a sudden his show is full.
No.
Think about it, folks.
Yeah.
In fact, actually, it's beyond time to think.
Yeah. Yeah.
The time for thinking was in the past.
Yeah. No.
And like I said, when I gave my lecture back in 2018, that was when it was time to think about it. Now, the actions are being taken.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. Definitely. So do you think that in 4 years this is going to continue, or do you think it'll change again?
We'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Again, that's why, I speak of the past. I don't see too much about the present
Yeah.
or the future, because I can get away with talking about the past.
Yeah.
Looks like you can't get away with talking about the present.
No, you can't.
No.
You can't.
At least for a lot of people right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I can say is I'm so glad I'm retired.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So glad.
I'm sure.
retired.
I'm
Yeah.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
All I have to say is, you can't get me.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. You can get me. You can destroy my life if you want, because I'm not talking. I write about films now, and I write about movies, and I even deal in sports to a certain extent, because I'm doing a sports show after this. Got an interview on a sports show, which I'm doing. Not right after this, but the next day.
Yeah.
So I don't deal in, civic and political commentary and all that stuff. So I don't deal in that stuff. I'm just dealing with movies, and I'm dealing with sports.
Yeah.
But again,
So
I'm so glad I'm retired.
yeah, yeah. So speaking of movies, this week Robert Redford passed away, who was such such an important actor in film, and co-founded the Sundance Film Festival as well. So you being writing about films and
Right.
right, and going to film festivals, we thought you'd be great to kind of hear
about
what you
that.
had to say about that.
I was a Robert Redford fan as a kid. So I was a big fan as a kid. Still was a fan up to and past this recent death. My feeling about Robert Redford, I've said this over the years, and I'll say it now. He was one of the most underrated major stars of the 1970s and beyond.
He was really good.
Completely underrated actor. I've said this for years. People do not understand how good an actor he was.
Yeah.
They thought he was just a handsome leading man, blonde-haired, golden guy, and good looking, and that was it. No, it wasn't it. He's very good. But for some reason, it's very interesting. I kind of liked, I'm a Warren Beatty fan. And I was a Steve McQueen fan. I kind of liked, those kind of leading men to a certain extent when I was a kid. But Robert Redford was a far better actor than he was ever given credit for. Fortunately, he won an Oscar for directing. At least they gave him an Oscar for something, which I'm happy with.
Yeah.
But it may be better. I think it's maybe better that Robert Redford got a directing Oscar, just like Warren Beatty got a directing Oscar. I'm kind of happy that they got directing Oscars.
Yeah.
Again, a very underrated actor. My favorite films of his, The Natural, which is one of my favorite baseball movies. I love that film. I'm just going to come out and say it. I know normally when you're a cynical reviewer, as I have been, and a jaded one, as I have been, you don't kind of wax rhapsodic. I'm waxing rhapsodic. I loved that film ever since I saw it as a kid. It's one of my favorite baseball films, if not my favorite. It's one of my favorite Robert Redford films because of the way he played Roy Hobbs, and the way he played him, a kind of an elusive character. Perfect choice for The Natural. So The Natural's are my favorite Robert Redford films. I think one of his better films. He had a lot of good films. If I had to say what I think his best film is, people would, again, I'm a contrarian when it comes to movies, so people might disagree with me. I would say 3 Days of the Condor, which was one of my favorite Robert Redford movies as a kid. I loved that movie when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Another movie I loved as a kid was Jeremiah Johnson. I was really into Jeremiah Johnson. He was playing this wilderness, kind of loner, hermit almost guy in the wilderness in that movie. I still like Jeremiah Johnson, but I'm not into it as much as I was when I was a kid. But Jeremiah Johnson I liked a lot as a kid. 3 Days of the Condor was another favorite of mine as a kid, and it actually, to me, is, if I had to pick a favorite, it's between 3 Days of the Condor and The Natural for Robert Redford movies. 3 Days of the Condor, to me, I was citing this during the pandemic, and this is one of the things I've said, and I don't want to be misinterpreted or anything, but movies are not simply about entertainment. Most people think movies are entertainment. Actually, they're information. And you have to find a way to find out that information and sometimes interpret that information. Movies can be very, I don't know if codified is the word, maybe, to a certain extent, but they can be very elusive, sometimes sneaky in the way they work. And 3 Days of the Condor is a movie about the sort of intelligence world, the parlance, and one character sort of caught up in, I'll just say, a cluster F. And he has to react to that.
Yeah.
To be polite, this is YouTube after all.
Right.
We don't want you guys losing monetization or anything else. But,
Right.
so 3 Days of the Condor, especially the end of that movie, and I've cited the ending where he's talking to Cliff Robertson at the end of that movie. This is part of how things get planned and how things get organized in societies like this one. And I'll leave it at that. I don't want to go too far because people will start looking into that.
So
But I would say 3 Days of the Condor, the Natural, also Al the President's Men. I would say those are my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my favorite, and I think his best films.
Did you
A lot of
ever?
other films.
Did you
but
have?
really underrated.
One second. Did you ever review any of his movie?
No, I don't think I ever got a chance to review any of his movies.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Did you ever meet him at any of the film
No, I would have
festivals?
liked to.
Okay.
I would have liked to meet him. I would have liked to have met him.
Okay.
To have met him, sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I would have liked to.
Yeah.
I mean, I love all the President's Men.
Yeah. All the
Yeah, that was
President's Men.
good. That
It's
was a
good.
good
Yeah.
movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like Robert Redford. I mean, watching him, my parents watched a lot of his movies, my dad especially, and yeah, I grew up watching.
And actually,
yeah.
I never knew he didn't win an Oscar.
Yeah, I didn't know that either until this
Yeah.
week when I was doing a little more, research on
I
him.
thought like he was good enough to have won a couple by now.
Right.
And
Yeah.
he's been doing that for like since the 60s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes, people bias.
Yeah.
The Oscars bias too, man.
They are very biased. Yes. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
alrighty. So, okay. So we can do a little introduction and then let you get started, right? So,
All right.
okay.
Hope I didn't take up too much time on that, but
You're
No,
good.
that was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. So, Rodney and Melissa Evolving
Yes,
is
go
here
ahead.
today with Albert Lanier. This is the second time that we've had him with us. Thank you very much for coming.
Oh, by the way, he's our first repeat guest.
He is our first repeat guest, so thank you for that. We appreciate that. So, Albert's from Hawaii. He is a writer and retired journalist. He currently has a YouTube channel and he has some newsletters and he's working on some new things here that he's going to tell us about today, as well as some stuff involved with the Inslaw affair and Octopus. So,
Yes.
Thank you for coming to our channel again, Albert. We appreciate that.
Yes.
well, thank you for having me. I really had a good time doing the interview that we did previous, and was very happy to come back when you contacted me this week.
Sure.
It's a little busier week, but was very happy to make some time to do an interview.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes,
We
yes.
appreciate it. Yeah.
So let's talk about the octopus.
Yeah.
Well, the octopus is a term that was used, I think it was coined by a writer called Danny Casolaro. Danny Casolaro originally was from Virginia. He was a freelance writer, and he was a guy who's known for a couple of reasons. One is investigations into what he termed the octopus, and he called it that, I guess, because of the sort of tentacle-like permutations. And the octopus is a group, technically. It's a sort of organization. In the case of Gasolero, what he was working on at the time was he was trying to get a book published. I believe the title of it was Behold the Pale Horse. And I note this in my article, The Long Tentacles of the Octopus, which is on yet another newsletter of mine on Substack. I seem to have too many of them.
But they're all good though. They're all good.
Yeah.
The easy read.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're really
I
good.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. It's on a newsletter called That Is the Week That Is. And that is more oriented, or is oriented toward more investigative and more news-oriented pieces. And I reluctantly wrote The Long Tentacles of the Octopus. And I guess I should go back here and talk about I don't like to use the term journey, but I will here. What happened was that I actually began doing research into the octopus and another aspect known as the Inslaw affair. Well, really Inslaw Promise affair. I started doing research into that over 15 years ago.
Wow.
Really back in 2009, 2010. And it was technically what I would call an independent research project. The informal term I like is my intellectual hobby, because I would go and do research outside of writing articles and writing, magazine pieces and newspaper articles. Something interested me, I'd go and go find some books in the library. I'd go read magazine articles, I'd read newspaper articles. It's something I've done for years, something I'm kind of used to. I did it actually kind of before I became a freelance journalist and writer, technically. So it's not unusual. And to be brutally honest, I don't know why I would need to be brutally honest. Simply honest is
That would be good.
Enough. Yeah.
See how you can see, I've done so many interviews over the years, you fall into these phrases. But I got interested in Inslaw, octopus, and a little into Danny Casolaro, who was the writer who had looked into both of these. Really from an episode of a show called Unsolved Mysteries. They had done a segment on Casolaro, Inslaw, and octopus to an extent, but mostly on Casolaro. And this was in the 90s. I think in 92, I don't want to be misquoted, I don't want to misquote it here. That's what eventually led many years later to my doing research. And so I did formal research. So I looked at, I read federal documents because what happened, so Casolaro started looking into the octopus. He wanted to turn it into a book. He got turned down by a publisher. And I guess he was still trying to turn it maybe not into outright news reporting, but kind of a mixture of a novel and journalism, kind of a factual fiction type book. And I believe the title was Behold the Pale Horse. And so I would encourage people to go to my article there. Again, it's called The Long Tentacles of the Octopus. And you can find it at That Is the Week That Is. You can go to albertlanier.substack.com. That's albertlanier.substack.com. Because when you start talking about the octopus and Inslaw and Promise and Danny Casolaro, you can talk forever.
Okay.
It's easily the most complicated and extensive aspect I've ever done any research into. And there are other aspects.
Is there like
I'll
a
give you an
simple
example.
version? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, that's good.
No, I
I'll
was.
give you an example.
Go ahead.
Good.
No, is
I'll give you
there?
an example.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I had done the research in 2009, 2010,
Okay.
and I did an interview, which people can go and take a listen to, on a podcast called Media Monarchy in March of 2010. And I did that because this was an independent research project. I looked into octopus, looked into INSLAW primarily, INSLAW octopus primarily. And INSLAW is the Institute for Law and Social Research. That was a firm that was run by a guy called William Hamilton, along with his wife Nancy, I believe. And I think Hamilton was a former NSA employee. He certainly was a contractor with NSA. And he had developed case management software, basically for U.S. attorneys' offices. It was known as PROMIS. PROMIS is Prosecutors Management Information System, I believe. That's, if I recall correctly. And so that was intended for U.S. attorneys' offices, federal prosecutors. INSLAW and the Hamiltons had a contract with the DOJ, Department of Justice. And the contract was a 3-year deal. I believe it was $10 million. And what happened, I think it was supposed to be $3 million per year, over $3 million. The first year they were paid, the second year they weren't. And what happened was that INSLAW ended up going into bankruptcy.
Okay.
And they went into bankruptcy essentially because the federal government, there's no other way to say it, had essentially pirated the software. Now, I want to make this very important distinction. I'm sure there are people that will argue this, who choose to argue this. I don't see how they can. PROMIS was developed by William Hamilton and his wife. Essentially, there were two types of software. The first was, I'll call it PROMIS 1.0. That was technically developed under the auspices of the federal government. So technically that was. I believe it was a grant. It was a federal grant. I think from the LEAA, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
Which I believe got sunsetted out. Law Enforcement Administration. So they got an LEAA grant, and they developed what I would call PROMIS 1.0. Then they, of course, had INSLAW. They set up their company INSLAW, and they bought it. I think that INSLAW had existed previously. They bought it, and so they got into business as a private contractor, and so conducted business with the federal government as a private contractor, and thus developed PROMIS 2.0. This was intended to be proprietary software that they would sell to, as part of the software that they would sell to, I guess, anyone. I guess they were looking to develop other kinds of software. Basically, it's a case management software. Like any attorney's offices, you have a lot of files, and what PROMIS could do, and you're talking about the 80s here, right? When you're talking about the state of computer technology, state technology in regards to, I guess, lawyers' offices and files, period. But basically what you had was that this PROMIS software could neatly have the files, obviously as computer files, and they would be neatly organized and indexed and allow access. And so the Hamiltons, again, weren't paid beyond the first year of the contract. But what happened was that they found out that the software was sold to other countries. obviously without their approval or permission or knowledge. So the software was not only being pirated, clearly, it was also sold to other countries. Then you have an individual by the name of Michael Riconosciuto who had come in. He was a bit of a technical prodigy, at least he was as a kid. And Riconosciuto got in contact with the Hamiltons and told them that he had helped work on the Promise software. He worked on the software to develop it. What happened is they installed a backdoor feature. And this backdoor feature had to be, I believe, password protected. So you had to know the right password in order to access this backdoor feature. And accessing the backdoor, having the password, having the right access allowed one to read all the files. So in essence, the software was kind of being developed by other parties, obviously, to be used as an instrument of spycraft.
Trojan horse, right? Yeah.
Essentially.
Wow.
Yeah. Because if you have this kind of software, which can record all these files, index it very neat, yeah, you have to understand, this is a big deal. It's a huge technological development back in the 80s.
Right.
We consider the state of computer technology and consider the state of yeah, I don't even think digital technology is the right word. The closest that I saw to digital were digital watches when I was growing up. Yeah, and you had, personal computer PCs, but you don't have the computing power and memory and everything that you have now. So what happened was that the Hamiltons ended up taking the federal government to court, bankruptcy court. And the government ruled in their favor. Because it was, I believe the judge in the case said it was trickery, fraud, and deceit. Sorry, I'm just speaking off the top of my head here.
No, you're good.
I wish I had notes, but I don't. I'm just speaking off the top of my head. And so that judge ended up being replaced when it was time for his appointment to be reappointed. That judge who made the decision in favor of the Hamiltons got replaced by the attorney representing the government in that case. And so you have, and so Riconosciuto himself, and of course it became a hearing on Capitol Hill. I think it was the House Judiciary Committee. Again, I'm sorry, I don't really have notes in front of me. So.
No, you're good, you're good.
I hope, it's been a little while since, when I was on Media Monarchy, it was like, this was 2010, so that was like a 2.5-hour interview. Because it's that complicated.
Right.
So I'm trying to boil things down. Plus we've got other stuff to talk about. So Riconosciuto had contacted the Hamiltons, said he had done this. And he had done this on Cabazon Indian Reservation land.
Wow.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think, should I keep going here? Because I'm going into this permutation and that permutation. I'm sorry if I'm a little hesitant because, well, I'm hesitant for a lot of reasons. But it's just that it seems to go, it's like endless circles.
Yeah.
In this subject or subjects, this area of subjects.
Right.
And so that's where he said that he had done it. Actually, I think in my article I know that he did it Cabazon Indian Reservation and a couple of other places, from what I had read, what I looked into. So when I did my initial research, this was, when I looked into this and investigated it, it was 2009, 2010. So I believe I read the House Judiciary Committee report. That was done on INSLAW. And the Hamiltons were represented by Elliot Richardson, who was a former Attorney General.
Okay.
Just so that people have an understanding. some of what was going on. Wakana Shudo, at that point, when the hearing had come up, and again, I'm speaking just off memory here, I think it was 1990, was it 91? Wakana Shudo had done an affidavit, and he was ready to talk about his role in regards to Inslaw. But then he got arrested.
Wow.
And he was eventually sent to prison for, I think, distribution of methamphetamine.
Yeah, drugs. Yeah, I knew it was drugs. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's quite an interesting character, Michael Riconosciuto.
Yeah, I saw a couple interviews with him.
Extremely bright man.
Yeah.
Extremely bright. I will say this. I always believed that, well, belief isn't a word I use. It was very clear to me Riconosciuto probably altered the software, installed backdoor and worked on it. So that I don't have any doubt. That seems pretty clear to me. Whatever else he's talked about and whatever else he says, I said this to someone who saw the documentary that came out, which was the American Conspiracy, The Octopus Murders on Netflix.
Right.
And I said to a host of a show that I've been on, I said to him, I've never met Riconosciuto because I never got that far in my research where I was able to get to meet people and talk to them and so forth. But because at a certain point I made the decision to stop. And I'll tell you why.
Why is that?
I was interested in a guy called Robert Booth Nichols, who's another person who kind of looms around this whole cluster, this whole kind of universe, I would say, of subjects. They call it the octopus, right? Casolaro called it the octopus. I call it universe. Because there's so many galaxies of activity and events and of dealings. Mostly illegal, mostly underhanded, a good number of it deadly. And Robert Booth Nichols was an individual I got really interested in looking into. My understanding, again, off the top of my head, so I'm sure the people who looked into this, I researched this year, and I did some, a few years ago, I did some additional research because I had been on another talk show, talking about it. I talked about it on a couple other shows, but when I looked into this, the guy I was interested in was Robert Booth Nichols. I wasn't interested in Danny Casolaro as much.
Why is that?
Danny Casolaro, huh?
Why is that?
Because I knew that Danny was killed.
Okay.
It was very clear that he was murdered. For those who aren't aware, Danny Casolaro, as I mentioned before, is a freelance writer who looked into the octopus. He looked into Promise, which I've talked about. He looked into the Inslaw affair. He had talked to the Hamiltons. I believe he had talked to Riconosciuto. And he died in a hotel room in Martinsburg, West Virginia,
Yeah.
in 1991, under suspicious circumstances.
It's kind of crazy right now. Where we are right now, we in between where he was born and where he dies. We live right in between that. It's kind of crazy.
I mean, it's been seen. There's more than one autopsy that's been done in regards to Casolaro. I mean, I don't want to go into all the irregularities. I mean, he was embalmed during, before the family. The family wasn't notified. He was embalmed, which is against, I believe, against the law in West Virginia. You can't embalm a body right away.
Right.
Yeah.
You have to allow time for the family to decide what they want to do. Yeah.
It was very clear that there were bruises. It was, I mean, Danny was a guy who, from what I understand of friends and family, what I had found in my research, and I'm sure others have seen, was squeamish about blood. So he's going to go and take a razor blade and slash his
That makes no sense.
arms
Yeah.
at least a dozen times. I mean, there were at least a couple cuts, from what I understand, that went down to the tendon muscle. If you're cutting that muscle, that means you're not going to be flexible in regards to your ability to use your hand and your arm. So how is it that you can be able to cut the other arm if you have a tendon muscle on one arm that's cut, that's severed? Yeah. I'd like the people who believe that he died some other way. Again, to deal with the YouTube algorithm here, that he died by other means. I'd like them to try to explain that. Explain the fact that this was a guy who was squeamish about blood. I don't believe he even wanted to take blood tests, but he was found in a tub of bloody water. People who are afraid of things don't die in methods that involve their fear, that involve their repulsion, that involve their dislike or discomfort.
Sure.
It's just simply not the way it is in what I've seen over the years. I mean, Danny was killed. I mean, let's cut the crap here. He was killed.
Right.
That's one of the reasons I sometimes don't like talking about this. The nonsense that they believe that he died by some other means. He was murdered.
All right.
So it's very clear.
I didn't want to get you upset. I apologize. I didn't want. I didn't want to
It's
get
not
you upset.
YouTube. Let me make this clear. It's nothing to do with you two lovely people. It's what I've heard over the years.
Yeah.
I'm sick of it. I'm tired. You know.
So, in your eyes, is that an unsolved murder, unsolved mystery?
Yeah, very clear. Oh yeah, that's why it was on the show.
Yeah.
The producers knew. And they did a good segment. You know, that was when it was the original show. I know there's a new Netflix, Unsolved Mysteries. But this was the original show. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I used to watch that show all
They did a
the
good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to watch that show all the time. I'm sure I saw that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that later because of my piece. But in terms of getting back to what you asked about why I stopped doing it, Robert Booth Nichols, the guy who was involved, I wanted to look into. He was the guy I was primarily interested in. I really researched this because I was interested in the octopus. I was interested in Inslaw and Promise, and I was interested in Robert Booth Nichols. He was interesting. I think my understanding is he had come to Hawaii. He'd come here. I can't remember the year, but I was interested in looking into that because he supposedly was involved with a guy who was involved, I think, in the Yakuza. And I thought, that would be an interesting angle, because I could have an angle here that would be interesting. Again, you have to understand, this was something I looked into outside of my work as a journalist. Mm-hmm. So I technically wasn't working here. I was doing this off the books, so to speak. And you start researching all this, you start looking into it, and you realize that it's like that movie, The Sixth Sense, because you see dead people.
Right.
You see dead people everywhere.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm going, is it worth it for me to continue and possibly end up floating in a river somewhere?
Right. Yeah. No, it's not.
Life is more precious than that. It's
Right.
not worth it to me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's what I thought about. I mean, I knew what the consequences were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to understand, this is 15 years ago. There was no Netflix documentary.
Right.
There was no 4-part series where you have two guys who clearly shouldn't be looking into this to begin with. I'm going to come out and say it. Now, let me just address this. I'm going to get this out of the way. I was a bit taken aback by the fact that there was a documentary that came out last year, I believe, American Conspiracy, The Octopus Murders. I honestly never thought that this, or should I say these, again, this universe of subjects and events and occurrences would ever be done by any Hollywood studio, by any network, by any entity. I never thought that would happen. I said, there's no way they're going to touch this with a 10-foot pole. Legally, I don't think they would want to go near it. I think structurally it wouldn't. But for some reason, Netflix decided to take a chance. And so you have this documentary that came out. Did I watch it? No, I haven't seen it.
Why not?
Why haven't I don't have Netflix, number one. And number two, I was hearing complaints from hosts of talk shows that I'd been on and other people who had watched this series. One of these days I'll see it. But in a way, I'm kind of glad that I had not continued doing research into this. And the reason I was interviewed on Media Monarchy, I was also interviewed years later on a show called The Ocelli Effect. I did an interview there. That was a weird one. That was a strange one. I mean, most of the interview was fine, but I got knocked off the air at one point.
Oh.
That was strange. It was like a weird kind of sound, and the next thing I knew, click, I'm off the air. Now we managed to get me back on the air, and I finished out the interview, but it was, I think I had that happen once with some other show. It was very strange. Very strange. I don't even know if that interview is still on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube. So I went back and I saw it on YouTube. It was the first time I had been on the Ocelli Effect. First time I'd been on the show. We're talking. 1 minute I'm talking to the host, next thing I'm off the air. It was really...
That's weird.
Yeah.
Spooky. It's one of the spookiest things in the over 15 years that I've been interviewed on shows. I've only had that happen once before. I think it was about another subject. It was strange.
That's weird.
It was, you know, again, I saw it. I went on YouTube, listen, and it was like a high pitch. It was like a, not quite high pitched, but it was like something, a pulse, something, some kind of sound. I don't even know if that's around on YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I never heard of it. No.
I'd like to see it. I'd like to really hear it again.
Yeah.
And of course, I've been interviewed. The last time I was interviewed about this was 2022, I believe. You know, I think in 2024 I did a couple of shows. But I extensively went through it in 2022 on a show called William Ramsey Investigates.
Okay. So
I was talking about, you know, Castellero and the octopus. And the reality is that, you know, I can't talk about the miniseries or the documentary because I haven't seen it yet. But the reaction I've gotten from people who have seen it has been very negative.
That's horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
And as somebody who has researched this and investigated it, I didn't go looking, I didn't just go on YouTube and watch a documentary. I didn't just go and research websites. I went and read actual government documents. I did actual investigating into this. Because this was years ago. This is really before you could really do real research on the internet. Even in 2010, 2009, 2010, it was still rather limited. But I was doing old-fashioned research, what I would call now old-fashioned research. And so I actually investigated this. And everything I heard about this documentary, I'm sure it might be well done, but I've heard a lot of negative things. And I look at these two guys, I don't even know if I want to say their names. And I go, how did these guys do this? You know, I'm someone with a background as a freelance journalist and as a freelance writer. I think one of the guys was a filmmaker who directed it, and the other was a photographer for the New York Times. And I can't say anything about the documentary itself, but the reaction from people has been that I know have seen it, and especially whose shows I've been on. I'm not going to mention names, obviously, but the reaction's been very negative. And you know, there was a guy on YouTube. I think his name is Peter Osborne. Australian guy who had been looking into this. And he had dealt with both these guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And he got screwed over. I think the name of his YouTube channel, I think it's The Sixth Eye.
Okay.
He has some very interesting stuff.
So, yeah,
So I'm gonna move on from that.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, because
I
we're,
don't have anything to say
yeah,
about these guys, but the response that I received is very negative. And as someone who's investigated this, I think it deserves better.
okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That's all.
yeah. So, so this was from Unsolved Mysteries, but you have a new newsletter that is kind of on the same topic?
Yeah.
Is that right?
He said you may be able to solve a mystery too.
Oh, yes. So Unsolved Mysteries, what happened was this. I actually wrote, before I get into that, let me just go back and just cover one thing about the octopus. The octopus itself is a group, basically it's a group of intelligence operatives. Or ex-intelligence operatives. And I not only wrote about this reluctantly, I didn't intend to write anything after I left, after I decided to stop researching it and move on. But I reluctantly wrote something. I wrote in 2020 a piece for my blog on medium.com entitled Labyrinth. This was in April 2020. I wrote Labyrinth, the Inslaw case and the octopus. And I wrote that because I wanted to do something that was more oriented toward the Inslaw and octopus and not so Danny Casolaro centric, because I think he's kind of misused, and that I think people try to use him for devious ends, like this documentary series. So I wanted him to be secondary within, and to do something that was primarily about Inslaw and about the octopus. And so it's this group, this very shadowy group of intelligence operatives that are involved essentially in off-the-books operations.
Okay.
And the point that I make about in that blog piece is this. This is the point that I make. And that's the reason I wrote it, was to make these points at the end. Number one, I believe prominence is important, and what happened with Inslaw is important because it speaks to what I call the spy state that currently happens. We see this in the wake of the Edward Snowden revelations. And so now, thank goodness, well, I won't say thank goodness for what happened because it's terrible, but people now know that the government and agencies monitor civilians, they monitor citizens, they watch aspects online and probably offline, but primarily online, right? So it's what I call the spy state. And Promise, the software, as I had brought out before, was a pioneer in that aspect because of the backdoor features and the work that was done to modify it, that it could be used for surveillance ends, right? Then the second part relates to the octopus. And the point that I make is, and this is a problem that I have with people who, and this is probably because of this miniseries and because of the documentary, they view all this as odd, and I understand it because people don't really understand the role of intelligence agencies, not only in this country, but in other countries. They have no idea, really, even though the information has come out to a certain extent, they really don't know, because they're not taught it in schools. And they're probably not taught it that much in universities. They don't understand the role that these agencies play in regards, not only the agencies, but specifically what I'm saying is the off the books, these clandestine groups, right? So people view the octopus as this bizarre conspiracy. I mean, the term conspiracy is misused because it's a legal term. That's all it is a legal term. But you have to understand, you have real groups like you have real operations like Operation Gladio going on in Europe, stay behind armies. And I use that as an example in my article Labyrinth. I use that as an example. And that's primarily why I wrote the article. I didn't really want to write about this, but I thought, I'd like to see an article like this. I'll just write it myself. And so when you look at the octopus isn't odd. It isn't bizarre. It isn't weird. It's a function of the shadow world of off-the-book groups, as I call them, of secret organizations, of clandestine operations and clandestine networks that will engage in very real operations, very real activities. In the case of Gladio, it was, very real actions they were involved in.
Yeah.
And so that's, I want to contextualize this because it seems so otherworldly, because a lot of people in this country, and maybe in some other countries, really don't have a sense of how, and I think for obvious reasons, how things really work.
I think
That's why that movie, The 3 Days of Condor, is so important.
Yeah.
Because it deals with that kind of shadowy aspect.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important. Because to them, it's a weird conspiracy. It's off the books. It seems crazy. It seems crazy, but it's not. It's how things get done.
Yeah.
Things get done because you have operators and technicians and operatives who aren't necessarily working in an official capacity, but are working in an unofficial capacity and being involved in covert and overt operations.
Yeah.
So let's so let's talk about some of the things that you're working on right now, because we're running a little short on time. So
So are you back writing about movies?
Well, I never stopped. I mean,
Okay.
right now I'm taking a break in regards to my newsletters in terms of active writing, because I feel, because I produced a lot of reviews for Retro Review, which people can find at thumbsdown.substack.com. And people can also check out Final Cut. So I've done a number of reviews there. The last 2 reviews I did were the movie Manhunter by Michael Mann and To Live and Die in LA. And I think the last thing on Final Cut is I put up a couple photo albums of my set visit to the Baywatch TV show. Now, even though that's a film newsletter, I was doing that to kind of celebrate my 31st anniversary. So I have a couple of those. So right now I'm kind of taking time from active writing right now, basically to continue on my promotional campaign in regards to the newsletters and my podcast and all of that. Because, you're trying to juggle everything.
Of course.
And, I'm like, okay, I've written enough stuff right now. I'm going to take a little break from writing a little, and I'm going to just focus on getting people to come over to to the newsletters and come over to my podcast and check them out. And so that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay. So yeah, let us know. So what are you doing on those?
No, you have a good podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you had more subscribers since the last time.
Well, I think I got a couple more.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So it's been okay. It's been pretty good.
Good.
And it was good for us. So,
But let me just talk about my other newsletter,
Okay.
yes.
which I don't get to promote really, which is That Is the Week That Is, which is at albertlanier.substack.com.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I did an article, I think it was more than a year ago, called You May Be Able to Help Solve a Mystery, which was about the anniversary about Unsolved Mysteries. But the article itself was really about why Unsolved Mysteries works. So, probably wondering, why am I writing about Unsolved Mysteries? Besides the fact that, I got inspired by the segment on Danny Casolaro that Unsolved Mysteries did to go examine and look into that. What happened was I saw a few items about this, I think it was the 35th anniversary of the show. And got me a little interested, and I thought, okay, looking for articles to write. I thought, again, I had actually written a couple articles. I had visited the set at Baywatch years ago, and I did articles for for a newspaper I was freelancing for, a local newspaper, suburban newspaper, but I hadn't really written about television. I'm not a TV critic. I'm not a reviewer, so I have no real reason to do it. I'm just somebody who watches TV like anyone else. And I got interested. I thought, I haven't really written about TV. This would be kind of interesting to do. But what really got me to write about Unsolved Mysteries was the fact that I started doing, originally the article was going to be a history. I guess I think I was going to call it a history of mysteries. But I read a couple of articles in the New York Times and the LA Times that were assessing the show. And let me make it clear, I wasn't a fan of Unsolved Mystery. I wasn't like a real, I love the show. I did watch the show. In fact, when I came home from college, I'd come home from late class on Wednesdays, I believe it was. I get off the bus, I head home, and right in time to watch Unsolved Mystery. But I read these articles and the way they characterized the show, I said, it doesn't seem like Unsolved Mysteries to me. And I don't think that's what the show is about. That's not how it worked or why it worked. And that got me to think, well, someone should write about why this show works or how it works. And I thought, why don't I write about why this show works? And that's why I wrote, You May Be Able to Help Solve a Mystery. Because I looked into why the show works. And basically it boils down to three things in regards to Unsolved Mysteries. The first is the structure and variety of the show. Now, it was a groundbreaking show. It was very interesting with Unsolved Mysteries because it was a show that started out really from a special, I think, called Missing Have You Seen This Person back in 1985. Hosted by, I think it was, let me see, Meredith Baxter and David Burnham, I believe, were married at the time. And that show was pretty successful. It was a special, really about missing people. And then they did, I think, another special, another one. And then they came up with the idea, it was the producers who were documentarians. I think it was Terry Ann Muir, I believe, and George Cosgrove. I hope I have their names correct. And so they came up with Unsolved Mysteries. And Unsolved Mysteries actually started as a series of specials. Remember those? Remember those on TV? And so I think there were about 7 specials. The first Unsolved Mysteries, technically the pilot, I would call it, was hosted not by Robert Stack, hosted by Raymond Burr, who was, anyone who's a TV fan knows, as the star of Perry Mason back in the 50s.
Right.
Then you had, I think, Carl Malden, who did a couple specials, and then Robert Stack did a few more specials, and then NBC decided to greenlight the show and turn it into a series. It's very unusual. And so getting into why I thought it worked, number one, the structure and variety. It was a show, unlike true live shows, like In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy, or later on after Unsolved, it was on the air, you had America's Most Wanted. This was not a crime show. Crime was a big element of Unsolved Mysteries. They like to play that down. It's interesting. They don't like to play up the crime element with Unsolved Mysteries. And so it was a big point of it, but it was not a crime show. If you look at Unsolved Mysteries, it was a show, it's what I would call a true life show. Unlike In Search Of, which was more paranormal and historical, Unsolved Mysteries was kind of structured like a news show. In fact, at the beginning, they would have that text, Chiron or whatever, and it would say, this is not a news broadcast. But I would argue it had a news-like structure. It had A block, B block, C block, D block. So you had different segments. So the reigning umbrella subject was mystery. It all had to be a mystery.
Yeah.
But it could be a UFO mystery. It could be a crime mystery.
Right.
It could be a loved one, a lost person, a loved one, or a missing person mystery. And it could be an historical mystery. So you got A, B, C, D block, right? And then you had updates. And so that structure allowed you to watch an episode. And you can still watch the show on YouTube if you're interested. You can watch that show, and you're looking at 3 or 4 different segments about different mysteries. And they're really different kinds of cases. They're all mysteries, but they're different kinds of cases.
Right.
So if you didn't like one type, like I hated the UFO stuff. Couldn't stand it. Ghost, nah, I don't like that stuff. But if it's crime, yeah, I'll take a look at that. Historical, oh great, I'll take a look at that. So that, I think that was a real strength of the show. The second aspect of why the Unsolved Mysteries worked, authenticity. They went to actual locations to shoot. So they didn't just go to some set at Universal or Warner Brothers or somewhere at Paramount. They went to actual locations. If it was California, they may have gone to, I don't know, Humboldt County or something. Or if it's, Florida, they might have gone to somewhere in Miami. Or if it's New York, they might have gone maybe somewhere in the middle of Manhattan. They go to the actual locations to shoot the shows.
Yeah.
You cannot beat that authenticity. It's absolutely terrific.
And sometimes too, they will interview people from that neighborhood,
Right.
like family members.
They did that. And they would use actors
Real people, yeah.
from the cities and towns, often from small theater groups. They weren't the best actors, let's be honest. But it was like local. So there was a sense when you watch that show, you're watching a show in these locations. You're not watching something that's created by some Hollywood crew. Because these were documentarians shooting this movie, shooting the show. The producers were documentarians, often the directors were documentarians. And then the last element is the photography and the music. Now, everybody talks about the theme song, right, for Unsolved Mysteries, but it was the cues, the music cues and the incidental music in the episodes that kind of set the scenes. And then you had the photography, was shot on film initially. I think that it got worse when they went digital. It looked terrible. Early years, for a number of years, they were using like maybe 16 millimeter or Super 16 Dynamite. Looked fantastic because it had that documentary movie look and had the kind of news report kind of look at times. And sometimes it looked slightly feature, maybe like an indie feature, but it looked like feature film. So those were the elements I bring out in my article of why I think the show was successful. The structure of the show and the variety of subjects, the authenticity of filming a different location, and the photography and the music.
But you can
I think that show was very effective.
But you can also add the fact that they used to ask people for help. Like they will put a number on the screen
Right.
and ask, If you have
That's very important.
Yeah.
I'm
If you-
glad you brought that up.
if you have any information to call,
That was the additional, that was the icing on the cake.
Right.
Because it was an interactive show.
Right.
And, and they caught a lot of people on the run. A lot of criminals, a lot of convicts, a lot of fugitives.
yeah,
Simply, from having that, they went from just having, I think it was a P.O. box at first, and then I think when they really first started, and then they had the number, and they had a telecenter. I think it was in a warehouse or something that they added. So they had people on the phones during episodes.
Right.
Sometimes they have law enforcement people there or what have you. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that was the extra element that made Unsolved Mysteries work.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like right now, if you have like a live show on YouTube or Instagram, people can message you, people can
They like that.
comment.
Yeah.
It's
They
people
like that
feel like they're being,
interactiveness, yeah.
exactly, they're being part of the show.
Right.
Now, for someone to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, listen, the guy you're looking for, I think he's
Yeah, it's
hiding."
my neighbor.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure.
That must be awkward, right?
Right? I know. Yeah.
I was glad that never happened.
Yeah.
I was so happy that it was like, no. The closest that I came in regards to Unsolved Mysteries was I saw an episode. I was living in Seattle at the time. And it was I think it was a singer in a band. And she was found in a neighborhood, somewhere in a neighborhood that I was living in Seattle. And the hairs on the back of my head stood up.
Yeah.
That was the closest that it came, like where I got. Otherwise, it didn't matter to me. Like I said, I wasn't a fan of the show until after I wrote this article.
Yeah.
Then I became a fan. Strange but true.
have you ever been close to something before?
No, I've never been close to something, but I will tell you that when I started watching it, which I watched it like every week when it came on, I became very suspicious of like everyone around me. It really did cause that. And then America's Most Wanted, the same thing. Like I watched that show too, and
No,
the same thing. Like I became,
Listen, I
was
live that.
watching everyone around me.
You know why I live that? The DC Sniper.
Oh yeah,
Because
yeah.
I was in that
you-
area. We don't have time for that. So, listen,
Yeah.
when they caught him, go ahead,
I
sorry.
haven't really talked to too many people. I'd been on a couple of shows promoting it, but I hadn't heard that response. That's an interesting response.
Yeah.
It could really freak you out.
Man, listen, I was living
It
there.
didn't matter to me, but yeah, I can see it now. I
Yeah.
can kind of understand it.
Yeah.
I was living it.
Yeah.
And
I just wanted to cover two things that I've written in my two interesting pieces that I've written in my newsletter, Final Cut.
okay.
And before we round out and finish up here, the first, of course, this was interesting because Final Cut, of course, which I've talked about before on this program, Final Cut is a newsletter about film. And it's a newsletter that deals, that has different kinds of film content. But I took a kind of risk this year in writing a piece called Raw Deal, the strange case of Gary DeVore. And the reason I took a kind of chance with this article was I wasn't looking to write a piece like this for Final Cut. Final Cut. Like I said, I had, as I explained before, I had investigated. I had looked into the octopus and I looked into Inslaw and Promise. I'd done some investigative work into that. I looked into it, researched it. And I've written about certain other things and, in other, either in my blog, as I had with my article Labyrinth about the Inslaw and octopus, or about other subjects, other cases, other aspects. I wasn't looking to do that for Final Cut, but I was watching a documentary called, I think it was The Writer with No Hands, which was about Gary DeVore. It was about this guy who was a professor looking into the case. And the documentary grabbed me. And it wasn't so much the documentary, it was the subject. Now, for those who don't know, my article, Raw Deal, the strange case of Gary DeVore, is about a Hollywood screenwriter called Gary DeVore. In 1998, he was supposedly found in an aqueduct in California beneath the freeway in 15 feet of water. He was supposedly in a sports utility vehicle, a Ford Explorer. His remains were supposedly found. Skeleton. He was in the front seat, supposedly.
Right.
No hands. The skeleton that was found, that was, I guess, identified as Gary DeVore, had no hands.
But there were some bones found near his body, right? But they weren't sure. They couldn't decipher if they were his hands or not.
So when I felt, when I saw this documentary and when I did a little research into it for the article, it just fascinated me. And I think because he was a screenwriter, he had written some movies. He had written Raw Deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had written, I think, Backroads, movie with Sally Field. He had written The Dogs of War, Christopher Walken. He had written some movies. And I think that was kind of the in for me to do it for Final Cut.
Okay.
And I thought, this isn't, I looked into true crime cases for a brief time. I analyzed them on podcasts. I'm not a detective, I'm not an amateur sleuth or anything like that. I used to say, I'm not, I'm not a police detective, I'm not a private detective. If you want to call me a consulting detective like Sherlock Holmes, fine, but that's about it. But something about it, compelled me. And I went, this is fascinating. And so I wrote it for Final Cut. And so people can check it out there. I also did it as a podcast episode. It's episode number 19 on the Final Cut podcast.
Okay.
So people can go to allanier.com, allanier.substack.com. That's allanier.substack.com. So that was just intriguing to me.
Yeah.
I don't know if you got to read the piece or you've looked, you found out a bit about it. Obviously you have. What are your thoughts about it?
No, I mean, it was a really interesting case. Just, the no hand thing was really wild. And the fact that, so where they found him, they said, they looked in that area right after he was missing and there was nothing there. So, how he got there was very much a mystery as to, it was strange that nobody...
Well, that's why I'm suspicious.
Yeah.
Now, according, when I looked into this on a researcher for the article, the LA Times had characterized the guy who found the SUV, the Ford Explorer, a guy called Douglas Crawford. He was, quote, an unemployed attorney.
Okay.
So this guy happens to read a newspaper about a year after Gary DeVore, who had gone, I think, to see a friend of his, actress Marsha Mason, I think in her ranch in New Mexico. And he had gone missing for at least a year. So this guy, Douglas Crawford, just reads an article about, DeVore, about a year anniversary of his missing. And then he supposedly gets a brainstorm. But wait a minute, maybe this is something to do with some other case in, I think, Orange County where they found a car submerged. And so this guy goes out there, which was, I think, was the 14th freeway, if I'm not mistaken. He happens to go out there, and he eventually finds
Right.
the SUV, the Ford Explorer, he finds it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Now,
convenient.
Very
I
convenient.
make it clear in the article,
Yeah.
I don't think this was a hunch. I don't think this was a brainstorm on this guy's idea. This guy was tipped off.
Yeah.
I'll just come out and say that. There's no way this guy suddenly had figured this out.
Right.
This is a guy who ended up getting disbarred because I think he threatened another attorney with a stun gun or something. I mean,
Yeah.
so,
wild.
you know, I'm looking at this, I'm going, something doesn't add up here. I mean, I'm not just saying with the no hands.
Right.
I'm talking this guy finding him
Is weird too. Yeah.
is weird. It's strange. It doesn't add up. And of course, you know, DeVore was working on a script called The Big Steal, which was about the invasion of Panama in 1989. And that was really interesting because it's very clear he felt there were other reasons for why the U.S. invaded Panama, primarily blackmail.
Yeah.
Blackmail on the part of General Manuel Noriega, who supposedly was setting up, what do they use it in the world of intelligence? I don't know if they use this in intelligence world, but I've heard it before. Honey traps.
Yeah.
Bringing people in. So, again, very interesting.
Right.
A very interesting situation. So the last thing I'll mention is the death of Carol Wayne, which I also did as an article for Final Cut. Now, the only reason I did the death of Carol Wayne, and for those who don't know who Carol Wayne is, Carol Wayne was someone who was she was an actress who had been in movies, which is again the reason I did this. She was in movies, not the greatest movies. I mean, she was in a movie called Scavenger Hunt. She was in another one called Surf 2. But she was in a real good movie that I reviewed. And I think that was the reason why I did this. It was a movie called Heartbreakers. I think it was the last film. And so I saw her in Heartbreakers. So I had reviewed Heartbreakers not only on Retro Review, but also I had done a podcast episode of this on Final Cut, the podcast, about the movie Heartbreakers. And I think it was because I had reviewed Heartbreakers, it got me thinking. When I did this article about Gary DeVore, I went, oh yeah, Carol Wayne died under very suspicious circumstances. She died in Mexico in 1985. And she was, I guess, there on vacation with a guy called Edward Durston. And this was Edward Durston. I think he was a used car salesman. This was a guy who was... He had previously been in the company of a woman called Diane Linkletter, who was the daughter of Art Linkletter, who was a celebrity at the time.
Right.
Diane Linkletter had fallen from the 6th floor of an apartment building, I believe it was. And I guess Thurston had said that he was unable to restrain her. He was there. Durston is also the last person to have been with Carol Wayne. Carol Wayne was found in a bay in Manzanillo, Mexico, fully clothed. She was in 4 feet of water, shallow water.
Yeah.
Now here's the weird part. Carol Wayne was not into taking baths. She somebody who clearly had issues with water. My understanding is, in the research I did, she only took showers. So, and I believe, according to the autopsy, no drugs and alcohol in her system.
Right, which they
And
said.
I know that she had,
Yeah, she had a drug addiction, or she had substance use historically, but
In her bed.
she was supposed to be down there getting clean, supposedly.
or on vacation, you know,
Yes,
they
yeah.
might have helped her with being clean.
Right,
But
right,
she was there ostensibly on vacation
yeah,
with this doctor. And my understanding is she was clean at the time.
right,
I think she had been to rehab.
yeah,
And it was clear from the autopsy, no drugs and alcohol.
None. Yeah.
Also, no abrasions, no cuts.
Right.
So,
And
a woman who would never want to go in a body of water for baths, even. She didn't want to be submerged in water, obviously. You can take a bath, you're submerged in water.
But what's the meaning?
She didn't want to be submerged in water. And she winds up dead, fully clothed in, she wasn't wearing a swimsuit, wasn't wearing a that, she just had clothes on. The street clothes on in 4 feet of water, shallow water. Yeah. And people, I think the consul at the time, he was interviewed, he said, it's a drowning, you could say, but there's something more to it than that. And I think the authorities there in Mexico were also suspicious. I think the Attorney General was. So, to be brutally honest, it's very clear to me. And Durston himself, he supposedly went to the airport to fly out. He doesn't just take his luggage. He takes her luggage, brings it to the airport, leaves a note. Now, I write in my article, the name of the article, of course, is The Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne. I write in the article, why would you need to do that? Like, you're leaving. Why are you going to take somebody else's luggage and bring it to the airport?
True.
yeah.
I mean, have you ever done that?
No.
You travel with somebody, oh, I'm going to go fly out. I'll take your luggage and I'll bring it with me and you can go pick it up in the airport. Now, obviously, you can't do that today, I don't think. But
Yeah.
that's supposedly what he did.
Yeah.
Reportedly what he did.
Yeah.
The whole thing is odd.
Yeah.
It's a very strange one. But those are two unusual articles for Final Cut to me. Like I said, I don't do true crime. And you're talking, Carol Wayne was the TV actress, but movie actress. And Gary DeVore was a screenwriter, and okay, movie related, so I could do it. And so there are two fascinating cases for me. I thought, I'll give it a shot. I mean, is it the kind of stuff that I want to write for Final Cut and for Retro Review? No, Retro Review's all reviews. But Final Cut, no, I don't think so. But I took a shot. It's a little bit of an experiment.
Okay.
So was Carol also on Playboy?
Yeah, she did Playboy. She did a centerfold. No, not centerfold. But she did a layout for Playboy, I think in '84, if I recall correctly. I think it was the same year she was experiencing money problems because she had been in the tea time TV sketches on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. She was like the matinee lady, I believe. And when they cut down the show, meaning the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, from about 90 minutes to about an hour to 60, I think her sketch was one of those that got chopped out.
Yeah.
So she felt a hard time
She
money-wise.
experienced a lot of problems. I think she went bankrupt that year, the same year she did Playboy.
Yeah. Yeah, they said she was bankrupt. I mean, she had no money when she was down on vacation either, because like they got in an argument about having to switch hotels because they had no money.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We were at an upscale resort. They were at an upscale resort.
But who was paying for
Initially.
it? Just crazy.
Yeah.
And then they went to a cheaper one. And that's pretty much what happened. I think it was the La Hadas Hotel was the upscale one. And then they went to the Hotel Playa de Santiago, which was...
Okay, but I mean, now, okay, is it fair to say she was an actress, she has money problem, she has drug problem? Is it fair to say she didn't know how to cope, how to get out, she was ashamed, and she killed herself?
I mean, she could have.
very clear to me that she was murdered.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't believe that she died by other means. The circumstances are too strange. I mean, that's why I wrote about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of it adds up. I mean, this was a woman again who she didn't like taking baths. She took showers.
I mean, too, yeah, I mean,
she
but
didn't want to be in a. I mean,
she's in
she
Playboy.
died
Those people in the pool in
Bay
Playboy.
Mexico. It's strange.
Yeah.
The whole thing is odd. You don't do that. I mean, again, it comes down to what I had said before. When you're someone who has a fear of certain things, and you have a distaste or repulsion, you're not going to go and indulge in those things.
Yeah, but if
Like,
she was,
it would make no logical sense.
yeah, I mean, but if she was ending her life, and that was her biggest fear, is that she would drown or something. I mean, I have family members that don't like water either, and that's their fear, is that they'll drown. If that's what she thought would happen, I mean, she could use that as a way.
Yeah, like I said, my thing too.
There's no way. Again, in her circumstances, it's very clear.
Yeah.
Something happened to her.
Okay.
I'm just going to come out and say it. I think she was killed. I think I say that in the article. I think she was killed.
I mean, no,
Someone killed her.
she may have been killed, but I've heard of Hollywood celebrities, when they lose the money, they lose everything. They
That's
don't know how to
true.
cope.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
They don't know what else to do. Yeah.
I think had that been, let me put it this way, had that occurred another way, I think the dying by other means would have been a stronger theory.
Okay.
Based on what I saw, you had a lot of people that were suspicious.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one. Yeah, I wrote about it. You had the consul at the time who was looking into it. He thought something's going on here.
Right.
You had the authorities in Mexico that were, I think the DA at the time was suspicious. They knew something else was going on,
Right. Right.
especially in a country like that.
Well, and the guy she was with had already been with another woman that died under. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I get it. Yeah.
and of course, nothing happened to him.
Yeah. 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 That's pretty wild. That is pretty
I
wild.
can say that.
Yeah.
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 I just seen some people that, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think it happens.
But thank you for being here, man. We appreciate it.
We do.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for having me.
You know, I'm.